everybody, it's Jane. I hope you're doing great. Thanks so much for stopping by. I have a really cute Christmas card that I wanted to show you. I love cards that look like scenes that have like shadow boxes. And I made these labels in a previous video, which I will link below for you to take a look at. And I'm using the Hutson Alpine window die. And this creates some great layers for a card. And the Hutson Alpine Snowfall, they were designed to go together. And I'm using the Hero Arts NOEL print background stamp. It has a bunch of different Christmas things written on the stamp. So I'm going to start with the stamp, and I'm going to make two backgrounds today. I'm only going to be using one in the video. And I'm going to be using my Misty. First thing I'm going to do is take out the mouse pad underneath, since the background stamp is pretty thick. And I'm mentioning that to you because I forget to do it all the time. So I wanted to save you from forgetting as well. I'm putting that in the lower right-hand corner. And then I wanted to show you how I center my cardstock. So I'm taking some temporary adhesive and I'm putting it on one side of this green cardstock, which is Gina K Christmas Pine. And I'm centering that on my background stamp. Then I'm taking the back of my Misty and closing it on the front, flipping it around, opening it up, and there my cardstock is centered. And it's important, especially when you have a whole bunch of words, and I really did not want to trim this down. So this is the My Favorite Things Sweet Tooth ink. I'm going to show you how I did this because I love this background, but I did not use this in this video. I just kept it in here. And it takes about 2 or 3 times to get a really good even coverage. I like to use a microfiber cloth so I can try to get even pressure throughout. And I think I did this 3 times. Because it's a pigment ink, it does take some time to dry. I'm using my Fawn stamp cleaner, which I love, and then I will finish it off with my microfiber cloth. There is a little bit of residue white ink on here, which doesn't bother me for what I'm doing next. But in the future, I need to clean my stamp a little bit better. I'm using the Brutus Monroe embossing ink, which is my favorite embossing ink, in my little stamp bag to make sure I get the static off of my cardstock. And I'm going to ink this up really well, but I'm going to do it 2 times. I wanted to make sure that I have a really good impression. And I'm going to be using some Brutus Monroe Alabaster embossing powder. It is my favorite embossing powder of late. It's just such a fine detail, and it just really, really embosses really nicely. So I'm going to be sprinkling that over the back of the card over my coffee filter, but you can see I completely missed the coffee filter. And I want to just check it out, make sure that I have it covered really, really well. Shake off my excess. My heat gun, I will bring it to the back of the to the cardstock when it's good and hot, really hot. And I just love to watch embossing powder melt, so I was hoping you might want to watch it melt as well. I remember the first time I saw embossing powder, I was absolutely amazed, and it never ceases to amaze me. And that's why I use it all the time. So there is my background. I'm sorry about my head. I am drying the one that I use, the Sweet Tooth pigment ink. It takes a little bit for it to dry. This is in the Alpine die set, the little house there. And off camera, I cut that on this 4.5-inch square piece of cardstock. And there's that little house. And then what I'm going to do is there's some trees there. And I'm going to cut those a bunch of times from that same Gina K Christmas Pine cardstock. And I think I cut them 3 times here, but I believe I cut them another time, so there's 4 altogether. I also cut a little red house. I'm getting my Nouveau glue. I love this glue. It never clogs up on me. And I want to put some little yellow cardstock behind the windows to make it look like the lights are lit. So I'm just putting a little bit of glue on the back of there, and I'm gluing that onto the cardstock. And a little bit of glue poked through the window, but it will dry clear, 100% clear. So now what I'm going to do is trim down this house so I can glue it on top of the White House. There you go, the White House. So I'm cutting down the sides, and then I'm going to try to show you, but it's hard to see in the camera. Do you see the line there? Anyhow, I'm going to follow that line. In real life, you can see it. Follow that line with my scissors, and that will show me where the line is on the White House, where the white circle is. And I'm going to glue that right on top. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little snow on the house. Hero Arts has a really cool kit. It is called the Puff Snow and Froth Technique Kit. I have everything linked below, so you don't have to figure out where to find it. And it has this lacquer tube, and then it has this puff powder. And you're going to put the lacquer tube, it's almost like a glue pen. And you're going to put it wherever you want your snow to be. So I'm just going to put a thin layer at the top of my house. In hindsight, too, I realized that maybe I should have made my chimney brown. But that's okay. We have a red chimney. Just put a little layer there. And then I'm going to sprinkle the puff powder on that lacquer like I would an embossing powder. And then my heat tool is really good and hot for this. Definitely needs to be good and hot. And sprinkle it on. Take a dry paintbrush and brush off what you don't want in the way. And take your heat tool, your good and hot heat tool, and bring it to your puff powder. Now I tried to show you, and hopefully you could see it puff up, but I wasn't really close enough, and it was really hard to see. In real life, it's very, very cool, and it puffs up, and it looks like snow. So I highly recommend that you give it a try. It's really, really fun. So now I'm going to trim down these trees. I started out making really skinny trunks, as you can see. And the reason I'm making them longer is I want to glue them behind. And then I got a little smarter as I was doing it. And I'm thinking, well, why am I making them so skinny? Why would I need such a skinny thing to glue? Why don't I give myself something bigger to glue? So I got smart. So I cut down all of the trees with fat trunks at the bottom. And again, I think I used 11 or 12 trees altogether. I ran a line of glue at the back, and it was a little too close to the top of it. So I did have to go back and add a line of glue down below, and you will see what I mean. It's a little fiddly at first, trying to figure out what you're doing, but I just want to figure out where did I want my trees. I didn't want them to show through the other side. I don't want those fat trunks to show through, and because I had the glue not down far enough, I just wanted to keep this all in here to show you that not everything is as easy as you think it is. And again, don't do as I do as I say. Of course, it's out of frame. You will have a much better success. What I did was I put a line of glue a little bit farther down, and now they are adhering very successfully. And now I want to put a couple of little trees in between the ones that I already have glued. Trying to keep them all a little bit straighter. And again, out of frame. Sorry. And there's my trees. Putting one next to the church. See, I got smart now. I'm gluing it from the back. And then what I wanted to do is I wanted to put a couple of trees in the front just to give it a little more depth. So I'm cutting off the complete trunk, and I will put it on the white cardstock. I did for 2 trees here. There you go. And I did that for 2 trees. I'm going to put those on either side of the house. A little bit of glue. Using my finger. I probably licked it first. I put I don't like the glob of glue there, so I hit it with my finger. That way the glue doesn't completely squeeze out from the tree and get everywhere. And there are my trees. I did straighten them up. There you go. I took the sentiment out of the Simon Says stamp, Holiday Greeting Mix 1, and I will link that down below. It has some amazing sentiments. I stamped it on there and I did not like it. I don't know whether, I just felt it was boring. So I had this great polka dot ribbon in my stash. So I put a little score tape on both sides of the card, on the back side, and I lined up my ribbon and I covered up that sentiment. I could have used a piece of red cardstock, but I have a lot of ribbon that I've been trying to use, be a good steward of what I already own. I put some glue dots behind the ribbon so people couldn't look, my recipient people, one person, couldn't look behind there and see that I had a boo-boo. And then I will make a sentiment out of a piece of cardstock, and I will show you that in frame in just a second. I don't know why I was having such trouble today. Who knows? So I cut this Alpine Snowfall out of white cardstock. This is all Neenah 110 pound solar white, and that is how it will go. But I don't want it to be see-through. I do want to make sure that there is some white behind there, and I do want to make it like a shadow box. So I'm going to take my 3D foam tape and I'm going to pop up my front of my card. Put a little tiny strip on the half so it doesn't get crushed in the mail. Put a little bit on each corner of the circle there so they don't get crushed in as well. And that's what it looks like on top of on the card base. So I'm peeling off the back of the tape, and then I'm centering on that Alpine Snowfall. And then I have a piece of just scrap cardstock that I'm using as well. I'm cutting off that little corner because it does stick out. I'm going to use liquid glue. I like to use liquid glue because it moves and I have room for adjustment. I used to use only tape runner, and then I was always ripping things apart. So now I'm using a lot of liquid glue, and I think I did mention this is one of my favorites. Putting that scrap piece of cardstock behind, giving this good old squish, and I'm going to center that on that back of that card. I love cards that have a scene. So then I cut the same size Gina K Christmas Pine card itself. I'm gluing the front of it to the card. I was having trouble with my words. And when I glue them together, I like the fold down at the table, if you see, and then I layer it that way. Because that way, if I've cut the card base a little bit too big, I can cut it off. And if it's a little bit too small, no one can really tell because it's completely covered by the card front. I'm going to pop that sentiment on with foam tape. And then I took another piece of cardstock and I cut it down to be a little bit smaller. And I'm going to put that on the inside of the card so that you have a place to write your sentiment. And you can actually, your message, and you can actually read it without having to use like a gold or a silver pen or something like that. So here is my card using the Ellen Hutson Alpine Window and Snowfall. And this is another one that I had made earlier. It's a lot smaller with a different colored cardstock. And if you notice that card front is crooked, I did rip it off and fix it earlier today, and the ribbon is behind. So I don't know what your favorite is, but I like the one on the left better. So here it is again. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I really appreciate you taking a look. And why don't you go ahead and make yourself a Christmas card? Thanks.